Hello, folks. Rowan here, and I come to you today with the first book review I have done in a while. We are reviewing Bonding by Maggie Siebert. I'm guessing it's Siebert, maybe it's Siebert. I'm going to say Siebert, and if I'm wrong, Maggie, I apologize. So, this book came across my radar when it came out in couple month or two ago, because B.R. Yeager tweeted about it. If you follow my channel, you know that my favorite book I read so far this year was B.R. Yeager's Negative Space. Yeager actually has a quote on the back of the book here as well. He's friendly with Maggie, I'm assuming. And so it caught my attention. I put it on my TBR. And then it was like on my mind. I made a video talk. I think it was my mid-year freak out tag. And it was like, what's a book that has come out that you haven't read but you want to? And I picked this one to talk about because it sounded really cool, and it had this recommendation from B.R. Yeager, and so I ended up ordering it. And then I think right after I ordered it, two things happened pretty back to back. The first was the Dennis Cooper blog post came out of all of his favorite stuff of the year so far, and I made a video about that and the fiction picks that he made, and this was on it. And then Maggie found that video, I guess, and commented on it to say thanks for the kind words, for the hype. And she offered me a PDF of the book. I did respond to her comment, but I don't think she ever saw the response. I probably should have just DM'd her or something. But then it ended up, I had already ordered the book at that point, but she informed me that the first print run had sold out, and so it was going to be a while before I got it. And that ended up being true. It ended up being 3 weeks, maybe longer, 4 weeks before I actually got the book. But then a couple days later, she posted on Twitter the PDF of the book for everybody. So if you want to read this book, you can read it for free. I will link the tweet that she tweeted down below, and you can get the PDF of it off of Google Docs for free. That may be a better choice for you at the moment, because the second print run, of which I have a copy here, immediately sold out again. And so the book is again out of print, and they need to make more, and it's probably going to be a couple weeks before they're able to get them back into people's hands. This is from Expat Press. They don't sell through Amazon or anything, so I just bought it directly from the publisher's website. And it's a story collection, horror story collection. So that's sort of my background with how I came to read it. But let's actually talk about the book itself. So the book opens with a story called Messes, which is a very short, let's see, it's 3 or 5, so it's 7 pages. It's not super duper short. But it's a short story about a man who's working in a sort of bathhouse place where men come to have sex with each other anonymously, and he's a janitor, and he gets a man attempts to assault him in one of the rooms, and he punches the guy, and his arm goes through him, and he he fists the guy all the way up through and then out his mouth, and just rips him apart. It's I can't remember. So this happens in a movie. I have the image in my mind, but it's like divorced from context. I can't remember what movie it is. But the story, this first story, was kind of just like a setup and a punchline, and the punchline was not, like, it didn't do much for me, and I was sort of like, oh no, that was not great. And I got kind of bummed. I was like, oh no, I hope that this book doesn't end up being, disappointing. We immediately go into the second story, Opportunities, which is about a man who is a recovering gambling addict who is driving across country and goes to this gas station, and the gas station has a casino, like a small casino in the back of it. And then I won't spoil it too much, but suffice it to say that something separates him from reality, and he becomes sort of untethered from time and space in a very weird way. And I was like, okay, this is good. I really like this. I liked it a lot. It was, again, pretty short. It's 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8 pages. And then we get to the third story, which is called Ammon, Ammon. And Ammon is a longer story. It's like 15 pages. And it's written in the style of an oral history, where, it's like a bunch of different people have been interviewed, and then each sort of section is like a person's name, followed by like a direct quote from them, and then it's arranged to create like a narrative through those chunks of dialogue. And the story concerns a child named Ammon and his birth, and then the first, let's say, around 10 years of his life, ages like birth to 10. And when he's born, he has all of these very weird and unexplained health problems and like behavioral problems. He's very hot and like acts strange, and nobody can like figure out what the deal is. And I really don't want to spoil this story, but suffice it to say, like, I got to the end of this story and I was like, that is, no cap, one of the best short stories I have ever read in my life. It fucking blew me away. Just unreal how good it was. It was like the perfect story to me. Just incredible. So suffice to say, that's my favorite story from the collection, is Ammon. And as soon as I finished that story, I was like, I'm in. I'm down with this book. This book has got me by the gonads, and we're going on a ride together. And so, like I said, it never reached that height again, which is fine, But it was consistently very good the whole rest of the way through. So my displeasure with the first story, that was kind of a fluke. That was the only story in the whole collection that I was not on board for. And that's impressive. It's 12 stories in the collection, and it's like 160 pages long. So the stories are pretty short. The shortest one, I think, is like 3 pages, and the longest one is probably around 15, 20. So none of them are super long. But Maggie Siebert does like really amazing things with the story here. Her ability to craft worlds in such a short space, such a small amount of time and text. Incredible. We've got a story in here, the Prime Minister. The story is not even 4 pages long. And it concerns this group of people who are inside of a house, and some sort of apocalyptic scenario has played out outside. And just the level of intrigue and mystery and depth that is in 3.5 pages. Unbelievable. Just so masterful. Like, I am just in awe of the raw talent here. You think, okay, the people in a house, apocalyptic, but it's unlike anything. The closest thing I can think of to it is like Jeff Vandermeer, the sort of Jeff Vandermeer apocalypse, the weird apocalypse. Just like, let me read the first couple paragraphs of this story. The Prime Minister is dead. Paragraph break. Okay. Paragraph break. That's bad. That, well, fucking sucks. There were small storms all week, the week before the Prime Minister died. We knew something was going to happen. We'd been busy boarding up windows and getting the generator ready and getting the food frozen so it wouldn't go bad quite as fast if the power went out. Whenever we got more than 2 storms in a row, that always means the things that come on the lawn, all capitalized, the things that come on the lawn would pay us a visit, so we knew things were going to hell and that somebody was going to die. No one expected it to be the Prime Minister. There were 25 people before this afternoon, and now there are 24. The 25th person was the Prime Minister, but he is dead now. If it was anybody else, somebody nobody likes, for example, say, Patricia, we wouldn't be so upset. The house is big, and some might even think of it more as a mansion, but still, it is cramped. So when someone dies, we've learned to find silver linings. We've learned to get over it. That's the way it goes, we always say, getting dead bodies ready for the things that come out on the lawn. We put their corpses out next to the big oak tree in a metal box we found in the basement. We'd draw straws, and then the 2 with the short straws would put on the big metal diving suits that used to be displayed in the living room, but are now used for going outside. They were in charge of placing the box and bringing it back later. That's the first, page, roughly, of the story. There is just so much information conveyed to you here in such a short amount of time, and none of it is really expository. It's all describing action, but you're gaining all this information about the world through it. It's not talking down to you. It's not explaining things to you. It's brilliant. Just fucking brilliant writing. This book can get pretty gnarly. There are some scenes that made me a little squeamish, because they were very gory and very descriptive. I'm not a very squeamish person. I imagine that the average person probably couldn't handle some parts of this book. It's just pretty gnarly. There's one story in here that was very interesting called Coping, which is about this woman who gets left by her boyfriend, who she is very broken up over, very brokenhearted, and finds this company that does this type of near future VR that wires into your brain and like it's like VR, but like you can feel and experience and smell and everything, etc., etc. And they allow you to create and act out scenarios. And so she creates this scenario where she murders her ex-boyfriend, and that's like the opening of the book, of the story, is her murdering this guy in a pretty gnarly way. She shoves a pair of garden shears into his eyeball, his eye socket, into his brain, and then she like spreads them apart, and it rips his head in half, like cracks his skull, and it just rips his face into two pieces, and it is gnarly. It is real gnarly. But then she kind of becomes like addicted to doing this, to booking and having these VR murder experiences, and starts to kind of lose herself in the act of murdering her boyfriend. And the story, like I said, the story is called Coping. Very good title for this story. I think this is the longest story in the book too. If it's close, if it's not. One thing I liked was the stories have a pretty diverse cast of narrators, of all genders, persuasions, etc. And they felt believable. So the author is very good at establishing voice, making characters feel believable. And that was really cool. Didn't suffer from like everybody feeling the same. There are some authors that are talented writers, but I think struggle to overcome their own like authorial voice, and like have characters that feel distinct from themselves or each other. Like Murakami is a great example, where like I feel like it's pretty clear to most people that like every narrator in every Murakami book is like basically just like a different version of Murakami, which is okay, like I understand. I struggle with that myself, I think, but Maggie Siebert does not struggle with that. One thing I also appreciated about this book was that it has a very good, very dark sense of humor. I follow her on Twitter, and I highly recommend following her on Twitter. Her Twitter is great. I saw her tweet about a review, and she pulled a quote from the review and put it in her Twitter bio, which called her, what was it? The Poet Laureate of Tromaville. Which, if you maybe aren't as much of a horror hound, you might not know. Troma is a film production company that has been around for forever, like 50 years or something, run by a man named Lloyd Kaufman, who originally they just like would acquire and distribute films, but then in the 80s, I believe, late 70s maybe, they started producing their own original films, initially mostly directed by Lloyd Kaufman, the most famous of which, of course, is The Toxic Avenger. But also there were a lot of other ones. Class of Nukem High was a big one. Sergeant Kabuki Man. All sorts of stuff. And they all take place sort of in this fictional, shared, what now would be called a cinematic universe, right? And they take place mostly in the city of Tromaville, which is in New Jersey, of course. And they're very gory, very campy, slapsticky, over the top, just as extreme as basically you could get away with being at the time, but very tongue-in-cheek. So like Class of Nukem High, that's like a very obvious parody of Class of 1984 and other things like it, but like a completely like gonzo version of that. And Toxic Avenger is a parody of superhero movies, but like a totally like weird gonzo version of that. So the calling her the poet laureate of Tromaville, I think maybe like emphasizing the humor a little bit too much, but like I think that it's correct in spirit, where it's like things are very extreme and gross, but also like funny. Like there's a story in here called Smells, where this woman, she starts having like tooth pain, and I, as a person who suffers from dental, I have things wrong with my teeth right now that I'm not getting taken care of because of financial reasons. Yay, America. And so I sympathized a lot with this story. A woman having teeth pain and starts having like a smell coming from her mouth that's like really bad. And then it gets worse and worse and worse. And then I'm going to spoil this one. Sorry. Basically, she triggers a apocalypse scenario because her tooth smells so bad, which is totally goofy. But also, like, if you've suffered from like dental issues, like I had when I was like in 2016, I had a root canal that like after the root canal, my tooth went abscess, and it was like the weekend, and so I had to go to the ER. I had to go to urgent care, and then urgent care sent me to the ER, and then the ER was like, you have to stay overnight, so I had to stay overnight in the hospital, and like have them do an incision in my gum line and all this shit and put me on an IV. It was a whole thing. It's the only time I ever had to go to the hospital. It sucked ass real bad. When I went back to the dentist later, he said that normally for an abscess like that, they make a 1/4-inch incision to drain the abscess, and they cut me like 2 full inches across my gum line. It was like insane. They just like scalpeled me with the fucking shit right across there, and they gave me lidocaine first, but that didn't fucking help. It was one of the most painful. I think the only thing I've ever experienced that was more painful than that was like shattering my wrist when I was 10 years old. That was bad. But like the fucking getting my abscess lanced, that sucked ass real bad. So even though it was goofy and over the top, it felt, I was like, yeah, it do be like that though, don't it? I really thought it was cool how Maggie is willing to experiment with style and technique in her stories. Like I said, Ammon, my favorite one, written in the style of an oral history, which is very cool. There's in the story Witches, there's like a section that's like all entirely like dialogue, unattributed dialogue. That's cool. That's a great story too. It's about 2 young boys who find a dead body in a drainage culvert of a little boy who had gone missing and has been murdered. And then instead of telling the police, they like they move and hide the body so that they can like keep going back and looking at it. And then it's a split narrative between that and then like the mother of the boy sort of like dealing with everything that's happening. Good story. Very good story. Then there's a story, probably the weirdest story, it's near the end. It's called Marriage, and it's written kind of like a play. It's all dialogue. and most of the dialogue is unattributed, has just M dashes at the beginning. A la like J.R. by William Gaddis. But every once in a while it'll be so like the first piece of dialogue is William Blake, and then in brackets off stage. And then there's also lines spoken by Elijah, also in brackets indicated that they are off stage. And then every once in a while there will be other stage directions like long silence in brackets, things like that. But otherwise the whole thing is just unattributed dialogue, where you don't know what character is saying what, how many characters there are. I think there's 3, but it's not established. You don't know for sure. And then like the final story in this book, it's a story called Every Day for the Rest of Your Life. This was another really incredible story, where you sort of get a overview of this character's life in a series of short vignettes. So like the first vignette is like the person's first memory when they're 4 and they see like roadkill, and then the second one is like a really traumatic experience with a kitten. There's a cat with a bunch of kittens, and the child hugs the kitten too hard and kills it, and it's very upsetting. And then like the third section is like the narrator getting beaten up by these 2 boys, like really badly beaten up, but like how good it feels to be like hurt. And it just sort of descends from there into like self-harm and like all this stuff. They work in like they end up working at like the meat counter at a deli, and start becoming obsessed with like meat processing and like how animals are killed. It's a very weird, very good story with a very good ending. And it's like I said, it's the last story in the book, so the book ends really strongly. The climax takes place in a animal rendering facility. My only real knowledge and experience of animal rendering is from the Errol Morris documentary Gates of Heaven. That, let me tell you, if you've never seen that movie, it's like out of print, like on physical and on streaming, I think. But the whole thing is on YouTube for free, and it's a documentary about two people. One person is this woman who opens this upscale pet cemetery, like a graveyard for animals. That's like very sort of bougie, but like it's catering to. I mean, let's be honest here. It's catering to like rich white people who really love their pets and want to have like tombstones and things and places where they can go and grieve for their lost pets. And then across town, there's this gentleman who runs the animal rendering plant. And basically, the sort of hook, the breakdown of what happened is that like a series of misfortunes befall this pet cemetery that leads to them being evicted from the land and then having all of the dead pets exhumed and given to the rendering plant to be rendered. And people aren't happy. So if you don't know Errol Morris, he's like one of the all-time like most acclaimed most, important, whatever, documentarians. And this was his first movie. And arguably his best movie. Very good movie. Actually, now that I said it was out of print, I'm just remembering. I think it might actually be on Criterion. Yeah. Vernon, Florida, and Gates of Heaven. I was totally wrong. So they are on the Criterion Collection. You can get Blu-ray that's both of them together. Vernon, Florida, very interesting, shorter documentary. It's like 50 minutes. That's about this town in Florida, rural Florida, where basically everyone in the town is like scamming the government for SSDI by like amputating their limbs, like getting their limbs cut off in accidents so that they can live off of government welfare. And what ended up happening was that after he had shot the movie, a bunch of the residents basically banded together and tried to utterly destroy Errol Morris, and they were like, we're gonna murder you if this comes out. Like, no cap, we're just gonna ice you. And so he took it upon himself to lose a lot of footage that would have gotten him in heat with these people. And because of that, the movie is, like I said, pretty short. It's only like 50 minutes long. But it is still really fascinating and worth your time. But anyways, that's a complete tangent. It has nothing to do with Bonding, which was phenomenal. Other than that first story, which wasn't even bad. It was just kind of like okay. Every other story in this was great. Ammon, like I said, was utterly spectacular. This had so many moments of just utter brilliance. So exciting. Maggie Siebert, it was just her birthday. Like, I follow her on Twitter, so this is why I know this. She just turned 26. So she has a long career of writing ahead of her that I am very excited about. The fact that someone so young made something that was like this good, very impressive. Most people don't publish books until they're out of their 20s for a variety of reasons. Not only is it really hard to write a book, it's maybe even harder to get it published. So big props to Maggie Siebert for writing this book, making it happen, getting it published. Winning the acclaim and respect of other writers who I have huge respect for, like B.R. Yeager and Dennis Cooper. Maggie seems like a super, super cool person. Based off of not only reading this book, but just following her on Twitter, we have a lot of similar interests. We like a lot of the same things. I can tell. Like the other day, she posted a picture of the mouse enemy sprite from Earthbound, and I was like, "Hey, nice." So, if you want to get this book, please do. Please support her and support Expat Press. Like I said, it is currently in between print runs, so if you do order it, expect a decent wait. But if you want to read it right now, you can, for free. The PDF is in the description. Check this book out. It is so fucking good. 4.5 out of 5. Absolutely banger. Alright. It is Sunday, which means that there's a new alphabet tag from Jim. I'm going to see how quickly I can edit this and then bang that out as well. So be on the lookout for that. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe. And you can find all my social media down in the description. If you want to follow me on Twitter or Instagram or Goodreads. Yeah. Thanks for watching.